All right, folks, welcome to the garage. And I know a lot of you are here to just see the adventure, but truthfully, the adventure wouldn't happen if the magic didn't happen here in this garage. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what goes on behind the scenes with a few mods and stuff that we're doing on Silver, and then might even walk you through my packing process and the chaos that it is sometimes. And then the adventure comes. We'll be heading out to southern Utah. The problem is right now is there's so much snow in Utah that trying to find a bare spot of ground is like trying to find hen's teeth. So we're gonna do our best, see what we can find. And you know what? If we have to play in the snow, doggone it, we'll figure it out. All right, let's get busy. All right, so on the agenda today, well, first of all, this is the set of Coffee with Kevin. This is something that we do over on Patreon, so if you're a supporter, you're very familiar with this set. This is where I give the download, the off-the-cuff, the uncensored, unfiltered opinions and thoughts and processes on what is known as overlanding and camping and family. So if you haven't taken a look at Patreon, now's the time to do it because I dig into a lot of fun stuff. But today, we're out here working on some stuff for Silver. Now for starters, we've got these driving lights from Baja Designs. And this is a new brand. We haven't run Baja Designs in the past. We've always run Light Force, but this is the one that fits the slot that we need to slide it into. We've got some sort of anemic fog lights on the front bumper of the 4Runner, so it's time to boost those guys up just a little bit. And then the marker lights, the custom AFN LED marker lights that came with the bumper, had some issues, so they redesigned it, came out with this new, more waterproof version. So we'll be swapping out the ones that died with a fresh batch. All right, so I got a few other things that I'll get to here in just a second, but if you notice behind me here, good old Aspen. And if you're familiar with the channel, you know this is our GX460 that we've built over the past 2.5, 3 years. And we kind of left you with a little bit of a sad note last season saying that we'd be putting her up for sale and potentially moving to something else eventually. But plans have changed. Aspen is not leaving. There you go. She's not leaving. She's going to be our primary family rig for a lot of reasons that I go into. Coffee with Kevin. So if you want to hear the full story as to why we decided as a family to hang on to her, you can get more there. But long story short, number one, we've got a new baby and not enough time to dive into a whole new build right now. This thing's ready to go. It's the best built rig that we've ever made. We took all the lessons that we learned from Silver over there, applied it to this one right here, and it's got 5 seats, whereas Silver only has 3 currently. So when it comes to turnkey adventures, she's ready to go, and that's what we want to focus on this year. I don't want to spend too much time here in the garage. I want to get this new baby out and see the world with her. So we decided to hang on to Aspen and make her the primary family rig as soon as things warm up. But for now, old Silver's going to be hauling me around the frozen desert. All right, so here we have Silver. I told you there's a couple more things that we want to work on. One of them is this rear bumper. I've loved this rear bumper, but it has a problem with slipping, as most off-road bumpers do, with a lot of aggressive use, especially towing and things like that. Some bumpers come with a self-tapping screw, so once you get it aligned, you can actually lock it into place by drilling a hole into the chassis and holding everything firm. We didn't do that on this one, so we're gonna get it straightened out and trim the plastic a little bit just to give a little more clearance, and then tack weld it to make sure it doesn't move on us again. All right, then another problem that we've been having is on this 4Runner, I decided to go with relays and switches as my auxiliary switching devices for lights and things like that. I was feeling really old school, didn't want to go with the new fancy Switch Pros and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to just go with something very analog so I knew I could rely on it. The switches are failing. So yeah, that one bit me in the butt. So I'm gonna have to dig into this and see why some of them aren't working, maybe replace some of them, and then eventually put in one of those newfangled devices like a Red Arc or maybe even a Switch Pro. And then with all the snow and the mud, this thing is just destroyed. If I get time, I'm gonna clean it up, but it won't do me much good because it's probably just gonna get dirty again. But it still is a nice feeling when it's nice and clean. So I also wouldn't mind getting some of this dust and stuff taken care of. But we'll see how much time we have because we gotta get on the trail. A little bit of a real life tour here. Got the toolboxes all set up. This is a vintage, I think like 1950s Mac Tools toolbox. And then I just recently put up this rack for all my DeWalt stuff. And that's right, Milwaukee folks. I run DeWalt. It's just where I started. I don't have a preference. And then this is my home Mac that I got at a bargain barn and just recently had to replace all the slides on it. But for 120 bucks, it was better than buying a big old fancy toolbox for $1,000. I'll take it. This is where I keep all my notes. This is all the stuff that I was trying to get done on the GX before I put it up for sale. And now that list is the list of things that I want to try and get done before we go on our first family trip. So it still works. And then over here is all the gear. Some of it's retired and just waiting to be talked about in review videos. Some of it is actively being used depending on the loadout. And yeah, some of it just needs to be put in a yard sale. But I just did a little walkthrough of all our different stoves. So the Coleman, the old Coleman, the Jet Boil, the Camp Chef, there's a Bass Pro under there. Just did that in a Coffee with Kevin episode. So another bonus reason to sign up. And then back in this corner is just some chaos right now. Drill press, bandsaw, miscellaneous stuff. And then another project that we're going to work on today is a 4-tire air-up kit using all these parts and pieces. So I'm hoping I can get to that, show you guys how it works out. Oh, and let's not forget the beast. The long-term project is patiently awaiting my attention here in the garage. Currently getting a little bit of a top off of the old Odyssey battery there. That's right, you rest, my friend. One day soon. And then hiding back in this corner is a Flowmaster exhaust for that guy over there. I've had this for over 2 years. I just never got around to installing it. So if we get time, we're gonna put that on silver and see how she roars. I've also got to hook these guys up. With those switches being finicky and stuff, I just never got around to tying this into our bumper lights because they're just not working. I'll get those tied into the same circuit so we get all kinds of nice lighting off of this bumper and into the ditches. And if you're curious about how often I wash this thing, not as often as you think, especially with how cold it's been. So we're just gonna go with it. It's functional. Oh, this monstrosity here is my aperture light. It's got a real heavy duty stand so I can manipulate that. It's also amazing for working on the vehicles because I can actually flip this thing down and have it shine up underneath the rigs whenever I need it. Definitely an expensive shop light, but it does good for filming. All right, well, that's the quick and dirty tour of our little workspace here. Lots and lots and lots to get done this year, but today, silver is the focus. So let's dive in and get some stuff done so we can go have some fun. All right, before we get going, someone wanted to say hello. Can you say hi? Say hi. Ooh, look at all those lights. Yeah, you gonna help me wrench? You gonna help me get some stuff done? Yeah? All right, so I gotta get this panel out of here. I can't remember when I installed it if there's nuts on the back of this or if it's already threaded. So I'm gonna take one screw out and see how it does. Don't hear any nuts falling down there, so I think we're okay. All right, so here is the old one and the new one. Bit of a different design. They tell me that they've fixed the water ingress problem, so let's give it a shot, see what happens. I always love it when a company listens and tries something different to make it right. Probably the best part here. So satisfying. Drop that guy down in there. All right, next we gotta get this bracket out so we can see about modding this thing to hold our new Baja designs. Not sponsored. All right, here's what we are working with, and here's what we gotta put in. So, matches in size, it definitely has different mounting mechanisms. So, let's get creative. Something like that. All right, so long story short, I'll save you the boredom of me sitting here staring at this thing for 30 minutes. But I took this bracket and I basically made 2 new brackets. Just cut down the size that I need to make this thing work, attaching it to the skeleton here. All right, fast forward just a bit, and here's what I ended up with. So for now, I'm just using some self-tapping screws just to try and make sure this position is going to be right. And then when I confirm it, then I'll change those out for some bolts. But that's going to work for now. Let's see if it fits. I am not going to pretend that this wasn't tedious and difficult to get everything aligned. There's a lot of angles that I'm working against here, trying to figure out with a new light. It was a pain. No joke. All right, now this guy connects up. I think that might just work just right. That'll do. All right, time to wire these guys together. And for this, we're just going to use the factory harness because those little squadrons only pull 2 amps, which is more than enough for this factory harness. So we're going to jettison the Toyota plug. And then the included harness with these squadrons, I don't need it all. So I just took the end piece, the plug that came on it, cut it off. We're going to tie it straight into the factory system here. And then that light should work off of our driving light switch. Easy peasy. For these terminations, I'm going to be using some non-insulated splices. That way I can ensure I'm getting a good crimp. And then topping the whole thing off with some high quality heat shrink that's actually adhesive line, so that when you heat it up, it's going to seal that termination from any moisture. That way there's no corrosion in the long term. All right, now let's plug this guy in down here. It does not take long for this stuff to stack up, does it? Especially when you're trying to go at a decent pace and get a bunch of stuff done. Clear a little of this out of the way. So I pulled the switch out, what I hope is the culprit here to our switching issues. Just going to give a little clean out because it is grimy. It works okay outside of its mount, but there's something about it when it goes into its mount that it doesn't want to function. So we'll go give that a little squirt too. Yeah, as you can tell, it looks a little dusty in here after all these miles. I do have plans to completely disassemble the interior of this vehicle at some point and give it a fresh start, but finding time is difficult. Seems better. Much better. So these guys are the no loss caps, and the ones that I have on the 4Runner are the original set that I got from Get Lost Overland back when they were doing their box a little subscription box service. I've been so impressed with them that I add them to the store, but these are the original brass versions, and they don't interact well with the aluminum stems once you get salt on them. But I ran them for, I think, 3 years in the desert with no problems. It wasn't until I got here in Utah that became an issue. But the new ones are plastic, so there's no metallurgical reaction. And you can find these on Overland Provision. Just go to lso.link/no loss. And this is how you put them on, because it's a nice tight fit. Just thread that little lanyard on there right like that. That way it stays nice and tight on the stem. You don't want to stretch it out, because then you just defeat the purpose. And then once it bottoms out up there, put your cap on. Voila. So now when you're airing up and airing down, no lost caps. They just float right there. Who'd have thunk it? Such a simple solution. That's what I'm afraid of. I guess it should come as no surprise that after 9 years of hard use in mud, muck, and assortment of salty roads here in Utah, that the head of the bolts were pretty much disintegrated, and I'm fairly confident the flange had welded itself together as well. So, tools of greater persuasion were brought into the equation. don't know if you guys remember these JVA uppers that I put on in the last big mod session for silver here. But I have loved these things, and this is one of the reasons why. This is a patented greasable bushing, so there's no squeaking from these guys. That's worth its weight in gold, because I got tired of that squeaking.
Now, if you're curious about this grease tip that I'm using, this little gem right here saves so much frustration when it comes to not getting grease over everything. It's made by Lock and Lube, and we actually sell these in our own store now. So just head to lso.link/lube for more details. Product placement achieved.
Well, that was easier than I expected it was going to be. And this is not sponsored, but Ingersoll Rand, thank you for making a handheld reciprocating saw like the one I had that attached to the air compressor, because that one sucked all kinds of CFM. This thing right here, nice, quieter anyhow, and control was spectacular. So if you're going to be working on bumpers, trimming stuff like this, yeah, it's good. Now you've probably seen in a few videos when I'm setting up the tent, I always have to flop that guy down and get to that latch, and that's just because, like so many of my mods, I was in a hurry before a trip, so I had to stop short of finishing the job, and this cable's just too short to slide it any further over. So I'm going to cut this loose now, tap into that circuit, slide that thing out a little bit further, which is going to be great because it's going to give a lot of light on the side of this vehicle here. But yeah, so many of these projects, it's not a show car. I was getting it done to get back out again, and a lot of these projects work, but it might not be pretty every time. Do my best though. Alright, so I fixed another problem real quick. I didn't even film this process, but ever since I replaced this rear glass, my wiper wasn't working, and so, or the washer. I couldn't figure out what was going on, so I started tearing everything apart, trying to find power, no power. Checked out good old Toyota-4runner.org, the forum of forums when it comes to 4Runners, and one person said, make sure your glass is rolled all the way up. Well, I had a hard time getting this new glass all the way up, and we were having malfunctions that it's cooked this insulation, and it's actually flaked off underneath here pretty bad. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that. I've got something I'm hoping will fit. So this is more of a sleeve than a wrap. So that's going to be a big help if I can just slide right on there. So let's see what we got here. Now, if you haven't heard me say it before, always wear gloves when you're messing with this stuff, because it will get in your fingers, and it is no fun. Probably a good idea not to breathe it either, if you can help it. Also, just sitting on the ground, it finally wore through some of this. So this is good timing. Start fresh.
While I had it taken apart, I decided I would trim a little bit off of the exhaust pipe just so it could all fit back in the tote without too much pressure on this piece. Now, a lot of folks have expressed concern about pointing this exhaust up and talking about condensation causing rust and things like that, but we've had absolutely zero issues and zero rust, so it's continuing to work just fine.
So much better. Wow, what a difference. Look at that. That looks good. This connection is one to really get as tight as you can, just to minimize any fumes from seeping out and getting picked up by your intake. Much better. Diesel gloves. Socket to tie to my auxiliary battery. All in its tote. All right, well, we're in the home stretch now, and this is my last little project. So I've been wanting to make a 4-tire air up system for quite some time now. I've tried the cheap one that's on Amazon, and as soon as you hook up one tire, it starts letting the air out of your tires. So you have to rush around and connect all 4, and it's just stupid to me. So these are all closed chucks. The difference between an open chuck and a closed chuck is that a closed chuck will not let air pass through until it is engaged with a valve stem. An open chuck will always let air pass through. So there's a big difference there. Now, I will forewarn you, if you try to use a closed chuck on a dumb compressor, what I mean by dumb is it doesn't have an automatic shutoff switch, you can potentially destroy your compressor because it's overpressurizing. The ARB twin, the ARB single, those are smart compressors. So they have an automatic shutoff. Whenever the system reaches a certain PSI, it shuts off. So you can use closed chucks with those. Something to keep in mind. Now you can still use a closed chuck with the other style, but you need to turn your compressor off and on between each connection. Between the front tires and the rear tires, I'll have an isolation block. That way, I can increase the tire pressure in the rear tires to count for my heavy caboose back here in the back. So let's start snapping this stuff together and see what happens. I will say this is just a first iteration. This is going to be external. One day I might do one of those fancy ones that's actually built into the rig, but I want to test this first and see if my idea works before I commit to tearing everything apart and routing airlines throughout the vehicle. So let's see what happens. All right, let's start by getting all of our pieces assembled here. And just throw a little Teflon on these guys. Make sure we don't get any seepage. There's already some sort of coating on the threads, but I don't trust that completely. No extra insurance. Of course, it had to be orange. All right, so we're going to start at the end and then work our way back this direction. Square up this cut.
Okay, pause. This is the incorrect way to cut this line, and it caused me a lot of problems, as you'll see in some upcoming episodes. Resume play.
So the front right is going to be our last tire, and I guess that's in. So we'll find out. So this is going to start letting air out, so I'm just going to gently lock it on. Now we're going to go front tire, and then we're going to put that splitter between the two like I talked about. And I'm going to keep it off the ground. I don't like dragging around a bunch of muddy stuff, so I want to make it where this goes over the hood. You know what, I might even make it just droop over this bumper. That's easier. Now I definitely want to do this in a worst case scenario spot, so furthest rim to furthest rim is going to be kind of what I'm shooting for there. And just a short piece that goes in there. It just doesn't feel super secure for some reason. This might be the easiest thing I've put together in a while. Let's just hope it holds air. I don't know if that's enough. You gotta be kidding me, guys. I measured this. No. No. Are you freaking kidding me? Unbelievable. I know I measured this. I can make it work. I can make it work. Garg. Org. Grr. Frustrations. All right, well, it's gonna work, but I'd hope to keep that off the ground. Not a single inch was wasted that day. All right, we're air down to about 16 PSI on the entire system. And now, I'm gonna try our new item here. Well, it's not perfect, but we'll keep messing with it, see what we can come up with. I don't know about it. We shall see. We shall see. Not terrible pack down either. More than enough. All right, well, howdy folks, and welcome to another episode. We are headed south, trying to get out of the snow.